Okay, I reckon we get started, Christoph. I think you've got a flight to catch, haven't you? Yeah. So yeah, so
Indeed, I do. Alrighty. So, well, welcome. For the ones that just joined, I'm actually in the lounge in the Singapore Airlines lounge in Singapore because I have a flight out, as Fraser just mentioned. So I appreciate the fact that you guys are here. Nice small group. I have a bit of experience, as I just mentioned to Dylan. Dylan knows that I started something new this year, and I have a bit of experience in that sense that I'm aiming to share today. So without further ado, I put a few slides together, which I'm gonna be putting up on screen now. And you let me know if you can actually see my presentation.
yep, we can
Probably
see.
not yet in presentation mode. Presentation mode now. All
Yep,
good? Okay.
yep, perfect.
So within the context of what I have been doing in the last 6 to 9 months or something like that, I've basically seen that there is a heavy impact of um, new design principles, new concepts that SAP brings to the market, which are dramatically changing the SAP ecosystem and the SAP world. And then, of course, every presentation that you do needs to have something about AI, because if you don't mention AI, it's like you haven't spoken. Right now, AI is the thing, and it is also influencing SAP. Um, Now, for those who don't know me, so I am Christophe Verden. I have 25 years of experience in the SAP or in the IT ecosystem. So I've been active in a lot of different things. I started off as an infrastructure person. I evolved into shared services, outsourcing, offshoring, and all these kind of things. And the last 10 years, I've basically been in Southeast Asia, and I built Delaware, which is a global SAP consulting firm or systems integrator focused on SAP. And I built their services in Southeast Asia, and I exited in 2023. So that's me. This is the reason why I actually came to the point on I have a good background on what is happening in the ecosystem. I really know it very, very well. And there is certain things happening that are very interesting that we all need to pay attention to because it's going to influence our lives. And that's what I want to share. Now, what is a toilet and a little pink ducky doing in here? Well, in Dutch, I'm Belgian, so I live next to the Netherlands and we share a language. In the Netherlands, there is this statement, wij van wc1 bevelen wc1 aan. This is Dutch. In essence, it means us from toilet duck, we recommend toilet duck. And this is a thing that always comes back to me when you look at these big companies like SAP or Microsoft and so forth. Everyone will always tout their own trumpet and they will say, I will give you a recommendation on how you need to do these things. And of course, the advice that they give is leading to you need to buy our product. So my statement here is very clear. I'm independent. I have experience with and I have a lot of background in, but I don't speak on behalf of SAP and I speak my own mind and I have sometimes differing views, but sometimes also views on things that align with what SAP does. Now, in many ways, where we are today is very similar to when I started my career. So I'm more than 50 years, I'm almost 50 years old, not more than 50 years old, I'm just 50 years old. Um, and when I started my career in 1998, the Y2K bug, so the millennium bug was a very big thing. Now, the millennium bug was perceived to be a um, a potential risk for the world because of the potential implications that it would have to banking, to all kinds of infrastructure operations, and what have you. So the Y2K bug led to a very big increase in the IT services market, and companies started to pay a huge amount for people who were not necessarily always ideally equipped to solve the problems that needed to be solved back then. Now the question is today very similar to that? In my opinion, it is. And I'll explain in the next few slides on why that actually is the case. So I mentioned in the beginning, this is about new design principles, mainly driven by cloud concept and AI, because AI is the thing that is influencing everything right now, and that is super hot. Now, this is basically a conceptual description of what is happening between 10 years ago and today in the cloud world. So this is an SAP environment, or a representation of an SAP environment. On the left-hand side, you can basically see the SAP ECC, or the old version of SAP. Let's call it an on-premise deployment, can also be the newest version. But what you see there is you have custom processes, which are the gray blocks that are intermixed with standardized processes. And everything fits in the same system. Now, the consequence of this is that these systems very often have a tendency to become difficult to evolve, difficult to upgrade, very costly to maintain, and so forth. And especially in a cloud environment, it becomes next to impossible to operate these systems in a predictable and sustainable manner, because they need to be secure. You need to update them, and that is not something that is easy to do, or that is very manageable. So it becomes very cumbersome to manage this. Now, with the move to the cloud, what we have seen is you need a different approach. And SAP calls this the clean core approach, but in essence, SAP didn't invent this. It's something that's even in the public domain. When you talk about people that work with the GPU license and so forth, with open communities that develop together, in the cloud world, everyone or many use clean core concepts, which basically means your core system, the code is not touched by anything, and it basically interfaces with systems around it through a controlled manner using APIs, CDS views, or whatever standardized communication method that they make available. So the picture looks then a bit like the thing on the right. Clean core, this blue stuff is all standardized codes, and then we have an integration, custom codes that basically integrate and extend the functionality, because you will still need custom functionality to meet specific business requirements. So that's the first big thing that is happening. Now, if you are today on the left-hand side and you need to move to the right, you need to do quite a bit of work, because you basically need to get to a point where all these gray blocks are removed. And this is a process that SAP calls cleaning up the core, which basically boils down to removing all the extensions from your old system, putting them in a side-by-side contract, and making sure that your core is clean and communicates in the right way. So before you make the migration, you can actually do this exercise. You make the ECC clean, and then you do an upgrade, and then your life is going to be a lot easier. So this is the first big thing that is happening. This is the biggest implication in terms of design principles that I can see, and especially because everything is going cloud, this is big for everyone. Now, first question that I wanted to ask is for those people in the call, when you are looking at where your organization is in its transition to SAP, to S/4HANA, the newest version, and so forth, and the adoption of the new design principles. Fraser, can you please prompt the survey? Fraser? There we are. Okay, so the question is, you're on S/4HANA and you have a clean core, or you're still on S/4HANA, but you do it the old style, basically with the extensions inside the core, or you're not yet on S/4HANA, but you're doing a migration, or we're having the migration ongoing and we use the new design principle, so we basically clean up the core, or we're just looking at things. And this is something that many companies are in. And I will show you a graph in a minute that basically demonstrates this in a bit more detail. All right. Now, not too many people that replied on this. Maybe you don't even have S/4HANA. That is possible because not all organizations have ECC over an S/4HANA. But what you can see is kind of representative of the market. Many people are still migrating or preparing for the migration. So I'll stop sharing this one. And we can go to the next question after this. So progress to S/4HANA. So what you see here is a graph over time. In the bottom, you can see here, this is a timeline in years, starts in 2015, ends in 2035. We're today here in 2024. And what you can see out of all companies, about 40,000 in the world that have S4HANA, that have SAP, basically only 40% are currently live on S4HANA, and about 40% are in progress of doing an S4HANA implementation, and about 25% is live. And the expectation is by the time that the support ends, they're only going to be 60 and 80% along the way, which means that after support ends, still quite a bit of companies need to migrate. So it's logical. If you're currently on an old version of SAP, there are many companies like you, and there is going to be a crunch that is going to come in the next 3 years before support ends. There's many companies that are going to put demand on system integrators like the Accenture, Deloitte, and so forth in the world to help them with upgrade. So this is an important consideration. Second survey, does your organization hire outside SAP expertise? Fraser? So the question here is in specific aimed at what we see happening in the market is even today, the market is already quite constrained. And with a constrained market and an increase in demand, we can expect that the number of people that are going to be available is not going to increase, but as the demand increases, people will have challenges getting support to help them in their migrations. I don't know how to put this on the next question. How do you do that, Fraser? Can I switch to the next poll?
We did the poll in the two places, yeah. So we did the poll
Okay.
together. So the poll had been so if you look at the results from it, one person had said they were an expert.
Yeah, and I probably even know who that is.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I think you just carry on, yeah.
So if we look at the graph that gives us an indication of where we are in terms of demand of the market. So on the left-hand side, you can basically see on the left-hand side, you can see the number of companies that have SAP migrations or platforms in evolution. On the right-hand side, you see the number of people that are required to do these migrations. So again, model creation date is today. And what you see here is a massive increase in demand. So the number of projects goes from 4,000 to about 10,000 forecasted in the next 3 years. And the number of people that are going to be required to do this today is about 60,000 globally, and it's going to rise to more than 140,000. So that's basically more than double in the next 3 years. And these people, they don't exist. So is life then going to be disastrous in the next years? So it will be good for service providers, and that's for sure. But on the other hand, is the life of an SAP consultant going to change in other ways? And that one is actually something that is heavily influenced by AI. So SAP relies on something called Joule, which is part of IBM Watson. IBM Watson in a wrapper, and it basically enables a lot of capabilities in terms of accelerating standardized actions in your SAP. So SAP has this strategy, AI in the core, links to everything, and you can basically use prompting to do a lot of the activities that in the past you need to do manual steps for. So I don't know if you guys have used ERP, if you have used AI. I use it for a lot of the pictures that you see. The one that you're looking at right now is also AI generated. But in essence, in the SAP space, in the ERP space even, because of the changes in the design principles with the clean core and the introduction of AI, you basically need a new age ERP consultant. You need someone that is no longer just focused on configuring a system, but you need a person that is kind of the mix between a management consultant, a negotiator, and a classic ERP consultant. And even that last bit, the consultant needs to be less aware of the true capabilities of the ERP, because AI will do a lot of the configuration and so forth. It's really about standardization of processes, focus on optimizing the way that organizations work, and then align it with a system. And today's ERP consultants, I don't know how it is about you, but the moment that you look around, most of the ERP consultants are order takers and not leaders. So the life and the profile of an ERP consultant is going to dramatically change in the next 2, 3, or 4 years. So the question is then, are we heading for a mass extinction event? Are we going to have a problem, and are all these SAP consultants lose their job because they don't have the right way of approaching implementations and so forth? Not really. We have a saving grace. There is an enormous resistance to change in people, and because of this, the expectation is this new way of doing things will be adopted, but there will be plenty of people and plenty of organizations that still follow the old ways. And to prove this, I just did a quick Google around the introduction of technology. Now, I don't know. I mean, the old people and the rest, like me, they remember COBOL probably. COBOL is a development language from the 70s. And if you look at how pervasive that one is, even today, there's about 70 to 80% of the world's business transactions processed through COBOL. So it's not so easy to get rid of all these old things. But the new design principles are important, are relevant to create sustainable systems. So the people that can adopt those are going to be incredibly valuable in the coming years, especially with this increase in demand. These people are going to be increasingly important. So is SAP in a perfect storm? Is the SAP ecosystem in a perfect storm? I think there are massive challenges to be tackled, but challenges typically come with opportunities, because those organizations that are ready for tackling this change, that can drive the creation of people that behave in the right way, that take the leadership role, that help these process design changes and so forth, and adopt the clean core principles, those are the organizations that are going to be successful over time. So in essence, a few key takeaways. ERP consulting will change, and it will change over time, slowly, because this is typically what people do. We have first few fast movers, and then slowly the rest of the world will follow. So it's going to take us 15, 20 years to get there. The clean core paradigm is absolutely valuable. It's relevant. It's going to create sustainable systems, and those companies that adopt it first are actually going to be the ones that get the most sustainable ERP solutions or ERP platforms for the longer term. And those that don't adopt it now will do it in 5 years or 10 years' time. There's no doubt about this. And the last thing, which I find a very interesting one, is even though we all look at more integrated solutions, development is forever on the rise. So even 10 years, 15 years ago, we said we're going to do less development. But when I look around and that the new ERP system or any new system that we bring to the fore, we see that extensions are always going to be required, and the volume of changes that we want and need in these systems is always on the rise. And that's it. That's basically the high level background or the ideas that I wanted to share around the changes in the ecosystem today. I can talk about it for much longer, but for now, this is just the brief ideas I wanted to leave with you, and I'm opening the floor for questions.
Yeah, just a quick one, Christoph. On one of your earlier slides,